The sun hung like a merciless branding iron in the vast Arizona sky, scorching the endless sea of sand and scrub that stretched before Jake Sullivan. His boots crunched against the parched earth, each step a labored effort as he led his horse, Dusty, by the reins. The animal's flanks heaved with exhaustion, its once glossy coat now matted with dust and sweat. Jake's own throat burned like fire, his canteen long since emptied. He'd been riding for days, fleeing the ghosts of a failed cattle drive back in Texas, where rustlers had scattered his herd and left him penniless. The desert was no friend to wanderers like him, a lone cowboy with nothing but his Colt revolver, a worn saddlebag, and a stubborn will to survive. Jake wiped the sweat from his brow with a ragged bandana, scanning the horizon for any sign of relief. Mirages danced teasingly in the distance, mocking his desperation. "Hang in there, boy," he muttered to Dusty, patting the horse's neck. The beast nickered weakly, its eyes dull with thirst. Jake's mind wandered to the tales he'd heard in saloons, of hidden springs guarded by spirits, or worse, by the Apache tribes who called this unforgiving land home. He wasn't one for superstition, but the stories made his trigger finger itch. As the afternoon waned, a faint silhouette appeared against the shimmering heat waves. At first, Jake thought it another illusion, but as he drew closer, it resolved into a figure. A woman, clad in deerskin and beads, carrying a small child on her back in a woven cradleboard. Her dark hair was tied back, and her face bore the etched lines of hardship, yet her eyes held a quiet strength. She was Apache. Jake recognized the style of her moccasins and the intricate patterns on her shawl. Instinctively, his hand drifted to his holster, but she made no aggressive move. Instead, she stopped, regarding him with a steady gaze. The woman, whose name he would later learn was Nita, adjusted the child on her back. The girl, no more than 4 years old, peeked out with wide, curious eyes, her tiny hands clutching a doll made from corn husks. Nita carried a water skin slung over her shoulder and a basket of dried mesquite pods and pemmican, provisions scavenged from the sparse land. She had been traveling from her band's camp to a sacred spring, a ritual journey to honor the spirits of water in this drought-stricken season. Jake halted a respectful distance away, tipping his hat. "Ma'am," he said hoarsely, his voice cracking from disuse, "I mean no harm, just passing through, looking for water." Nita studied him, her expression unreadable. In her world, strangers were often harbingers of trouble, white men with their guns and greed. But something in Jake's weary posture, the way he favored his horse over himself, stirred a flicker of compassion. She reached into her basket and pulled out a strip of pemmican, offering it silently. Then, uncorking her water skin, she poured a small amount into her cupped hand and extended it toward Dusty, who lapped it eagerly. Grateful beyond words, Jake accepted the food, tearing off a piece for himself before noticing the child's hungry stare. Without thinking, he broke off another morsel and handed it to the girl. She took it shyly, nibbling with delight. "Thank you," Jake said, his voice softening. "This means the world to us." Nita's eyes widened slightly, a subtle shift that Jake missed in his fatigue. In Apache tradition, sharing food with a child was no mere courtesy. It was a sacred act, akin to adopting kin. It bound the giver to the receiver's family, invoking responsibilities of protection and loyalty. Nita nodded solemnly. "You have fed my daughter, Ayana," she said in halting English, learned from traders. "Now you are tied to us. Come, our camp is near. Rest there." Jake blinked, unsure if he'd heard right. Tied? It sounded ominous, but the promise of rest outweighed his caution. He followed her through the dunes, the sun dipping toward the horizon like a fading ember. The Apache camp nestled in a shallow canyon hidden by jagged rocks and sparse junipers. Teepees dotted the landscape, smoke curling from central fires where women tended pots and men sharpened arrows. Children played with hoops and sticks, their laughter a stark contrast to the desert's silence. As Jake entered, eyes turned toward him, wary, piercing. He tethered Dusty to a post and accepted a gourd of water from Nita, drinking deeply. Word spread quickly. Soon the band's leader, Chief Cale, approached. A tall man with weathered skin and feathers braided into his hair, Cale carried the weight of his people's history, battles with settlers, broken treaties, and the unyielding fight for survival. He spoke to Nita in their native tongue, his tone grave. She explained the encounter, gesturing to Jake and Ayanna. Cale turned to Jake, his voice steady. "White man, you have shared sustenance with the child of our blood. In our ways, food is life, water is spirit. To give it freely is to forge a chain of honor. You are now bound, protector to her, kin to us. Do you understand?" Jake's heart raced. I didn't mean no offense, sir. It was just a bite to eat. I ain't looking to cause trouble." Cale's gaze softened, not with anger, but wisdom. "No offense taken. This is not a curse, but a blessing. Kindness creates duty. You have entered our circle through respect, not force. Stay, learn, or leave and break the bond at your peril. The spirits watch." Overwhelmed, Jake nodded. He spent the night by the fire, listening to stories of the land's ancient guardians. Nita sat nearby, Ayanna asleep in her lap. As stars blanketed the sky, Jake felt a strange pull, not fear, but curiosity. In the days that followed, Jake returned to the camp often. At first, it was for practical reasons, fresh water, food, and shade for Dusty. But soon it became more. He helped with chores, fetching wood, mending fences, earning tentative trust. Nita taught him Apache words, water as toe, sacred and vital. She shared legends of Coyote the trickster and the great spirit who shaped the mountains. One evening, as they walked to the spring, Nita opened up. "My husband fell in a raid years ago," she said softly. "Ayanna is all I have. Your act, it means she has a guardian now." Jake felt a warmth stir in his chest, a bond growing like roots in dry soil. It wasn't romance at first, more a shared vulnerability. But in quiet moments their eyes met, speaking volumes. Challenges arose. Once a sandstorm howled through the canyon, burying supplies. Jake braved the winds to secure the horses, earning nods from the warriors. Another time, scouts reported encroaching prospectors, greedy men seeking gold. Jake, with his knowledge of the white world, advised on evasion tactics, blending his skills with theirs. By the campfire one night, under a full moon, Chief Kyle performed a ritual. He painted symbols on Jake's forehead with red ochre, chanting prayers. "You are no longer alone, Jake Sullivan. This bond is family. Honor it, and the land will honor you." Jake reflected on his old life, the endless trails, the solitude that had once been his armor. Now it cracked, revealing a longing for connection. Nita's hand brushed his, a silent promise. Ayanna called him uncle, her laughter healing wounds he didn't know he carried. As seasons turned, Jake shed his cowboy ways. He learned to hunt with bows, to read the stars for guidance, to respect the desert not as enemy, but teacher. The bond, born of a simple gesture, had woven him into the fabric of their world, a tapestry of tradition, protection, and shared destiny. No longer a wanderer, Jake found his place. In the Apache camp, amid the whispers of wind and fire, he was home, bound by honor, enriched by love, forever changed. The next morning after his arrival, Jake awoke to the scent of sage and frying bread. His body ached from the hard ground, but the rest had renewed him. Dusty grazed contentedly on sparse grass, a far cry from the near collapse of yesterday. Nita approached with a bowl of corn mush topped with berries. "Eat," she said, "strength for the day." As he ate, Ayanna toddled over, her small hand tugging at his sleeve. "More?" she asked, in her childish mix of languages. Jake chuckled, offering her a spoonful. Nita watched, a soft smile playing on her lips. "You do it again," she noted. "The bond deepens." Jake paused. Tell me more about this tradition. I don't want to step wrong. Nita sat beside him, her voice like a gentle stream. In our people, the Apache, life is a circle. Food is not just body fuel, it's spirit sharing. When you feed a child, you say, "I will protect you as my own." It's from the old days, when clans united against enemies. Now, with whites taking land, such bonds are rare, but sacred. Jake nodded, absorbing her words. He'd heard Apaches called fierce warriors, but here was depth, philosophy born of survival. Back where I'm from, kindness is just polite, no strings. Strings make us strong, like ropes in a hunt. That day, Jake joined a scouting party led by KL's son, Taryn. They rode into the hills, tracking deer. Taryn, a young warrior with sharp eyes, taught Jake silent signals, hand gestures for danger. When they spotted a buck, Jake's rifle instinct kicked in, but Taryn shook his head. Bow only. Respect the animal's spirit. Jake observed as Taryn felled the deer with a single arrow. Back at camp, the meat was divided equally, a ritual of gratitude chanted. Jake felt out of place, yet intrigued. Nights brought stories. Elders spoke of Geronimo's resistance, of canyons hiding from cavalry. Jake shared his tales, crossing the Rio Grande, dodging outlaws. Laughter erupted when he mimicked a drunken sheriff. Tension peaked one afternoon. Riders, 3 rough prospectors, stumbled upon the camp, demanding water and eyeing the women. Jake stood with the warriors, his Colt drawn. "This ain't your land," he growled. A skirmish ensued, arrows whistling past bullets. Jake winged one intruder, sending them fleeing. KL clasped his shoulder afterward. "You fought for us. The bond is proven." Nita tended a scratch on Jake's arm that evening, her touch lingering. "Why stay?" she asked. "Because I see now. This is more than survival. It's living." Their bond blossomed. Walks under stars turned intimate, whispers of dreams shared. Ayana's giggles sealed it. Family. Months later, at a harvest dance, Jake was initiated fully. Painted and adorned, he danced around the fire, heart pounding with belonging. The desert, once foe, now cradled him. Jake Sullivan, cowboy no more, was Apache in soul, bound eternally.